All right, how's it going, podcast family? Back again, bringing back some familiar faces that have been on the podcast before. To my immediate right, Professor Kelly. Professor Kelly and I did a podcast talking about entrepreneurship, opening up an academy before I was able to open mine up. And also to his right, I have Lieutenant Colonel Brandon Cooley. At the time, was wrapping up his time as the battalion commander for 8th ESB. When we spoke, talked to him about the resiliency of his Marines training Jiu-Jitsu and how it impacted Marines overall in their decision making. Today we're back to talk about a little different subject. Today we're gonna talk briefly about the Marine Corps Jiu-Jitsu program that's kind of been emerging across the Marine Corps. To be clear, disclaimer up front: these are our views. These views are not tied to any DoD organization, Marine Corps, Navy, any of the above. Just the views of three individuals who are passionate about Jiu-Jitsu, leading Marines, and seeing Jiu-Jitsu kind of take off here, what we'll talk about later. First and foremost, want to throw it out. What is the Marine Corps Jiu-Jitsu program, and how do you see it playing a part here for the Marine Corps?
As of today, right now, I think that we can divide it into two separate, camps, if you will. There's an official U.S. Marine Corps Jiu-Jitsu program, and then there are unofficial efforts around the Marine Corps trying to align to the official program. So the official program right now is essentially an experiment in the IBX series of experiments, Infantry Battalion Experiment. And for this iteration that's happening now in 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines, it got briefed through the warfighting lab as a line of effort under many things that were happening under IBX. There was going to be an additional line of effort of resiliency, and the project or the effort against that line effort would be a jiu-jitsu program. This was put into the IBX really by Colonel Chris Bronzy, who recently just had his retirement ceremony. He is the one who introduced it under the idea that much of the IBX experimentation was focused on equipment and technology and those kinds of things, sure, but there should be something in there for the individual Marine, and then that is essentially how it got introduced. That is the official effort. In addition to that official effort, I think we can say that 1st Marine Division is in the process of expanding that official effort. So there was some back and forth with what's happening at 3-4, but 3-4 has an infantry battalion, has a black belt, Staff Sergeant Straley. He is doing the first step of the program, which really is focused on train the trainer stuff. So that's happening in 3-4. We know officially there will be the same effort, don't know what it's going to look like, on the West Coast under General Watson's guidance, his intent, and it looks like it's going to be 3-5 with Lieutenant Colonel Evan Bradley, your friend. So I think that's official as well, even though the division remains, we don't know exactly how they're going to execute that. Sure. That's the formal stuff. The informal stuff are some other efforts. I'll let Brandon talk about the kind of how you see the informal effort.
Yeah, informal efforts that we've had, and you've been a part of this. Really inside of Expeditionary Warfare School. They put it under the auspice of their enrichment seminars, but that has grown, and we're kind of the grassroots aligning. I talk to Staff Sergeant Straley quite often to make sure that we're aligned with what he's doing. But now it's not so much EWS, it's Marine Corps University wide. We have EWS captains, we have command and staff majors, we have folks from including myself, from the War College, and really getting on the mats. And it's not so much about, it's really building a culture of jiu-jitsu, and staying aligned to that, the training methodologies. But what's good is I get these folks for 10 months. As Staff Sergeant Straley's training his folks up, he's going 3 weeks at a time and building these folks to be able to go out and support their units with the Jiu-Jitsu program. I get 10 months with these students, but these are going to be the leaders of those same Marines that Staff Sergeant Straley is doing. I know there's some other non-official grassroots campaigns at the other bases that we're all aware of as well. You know, you have Cherry Point has a club down there that's operating. 2nd Marine Division Band just started their jiu-jitsu program. Camp Lejeune has their grappling kind of all over. Every MFC, one of the big things I did and wanted to push before I left, along with Lieutenant Colonel Eric Piper, was we had the old wrestling team mats. And everybody was asking for mats and places to train jiu-jitsu because we know what's out there. And we were able to push those mats to all the MSCs. So the MIG got some, the MEF got some, Division got some. We got some up to Cherry Point, and then obviously the MLG as well, inside of with ATSB. So those are kind of the smaller grassroots campaigns, if you will.
Yeah, I think there's clearly a bunch of...
There are.
That's everywhere.
Yeah,
right? There are Marines who are doing things everywhere that's kind of training. And then at the next level, I think, to me, is what you're doing at Marine Corps University, what we will soon see, I think, at OCS, where as opposed to just grappling to work out together,
right,
there's this next tier of understanding of what is the future of a Marine Corps Jiu-Jitsu program.
Sure.
And it's not just rolling. I mean,
That's
there's some specific things that we're focused on, one of which is, you know, we're trying not to codify it. We're not trying to make a new jiu-jitsu. We're just trying to bring jiu-jitsu into the Marine Corps, not make something new. So we really don't want it codified. And now in the beginning, as you said, it's about the culture and the training. And so Nate just happens to be an exceptional black belt. But what we're really trying to say is, look, there's no gateway or wicket you really got to get through except how to train the right way.
Yeah, how to train safely. Yeah.
Right.
And I think that brings up the point between the Marine Corps Martial Arts Program, Marine Corps Jiu-Jitsu Program. You know, being a lifelong career-wise martial arts instructor trainer, it is definitely important to draw a divide between the two. And the way I see it is, you know, Marine Corps Martial Arts Program is preparing us for going down range, fighting against the enemy, aggressive in combat. There are some aspects of the mental, you know, character disciplines as well too. But I think jiu-jitsu is more so for the individual, for the unit cohesion, for the mental resiliency, for the decision making. Some of the gaps that you don't get in the Marine Corps Martial Arts Program. So I think, you know, it is definitely clear to say this is not an insurgence of replacing the Marine Corps Martial Arts Program, which definitely has a place. And I don't think it's any different than any other intramural sport or off-duty activity that a Marine does. A Marine can go on Quantico and sign up to go hunt, right? He becomes a better shooter. He gets life training on hunting a object down or an individual down, and, you know, in eliminating it. Nobody bats an eye about Marines going hunting, right? But when you bring up jiu-jitsu outside of work, they're like, oh, why is a Marine doing jiu-jitsu? Well, he's honing his skills as a Marine. Why would he not do jiu-jitsu? I don't know what your thoughts are.
No, I agree with that. And, you know, I harp on this a lot. I always have like top 3 reasons. Top 3 reasons you should train. Top 3 reasons that's person should train. And for Marines, I always say, number 1, resiliency, quality of life.
Yep.
Number 2, decision making. Second reason Marines should be trained. Third reason is the embodiment of our warfighting philosophy. So that's kind of my personal perspective. That's what I've said for years. This is why Marines should be training. But as I'm going to capture something you were, with regard to McMath, and the Jiu-Jitsu program, as you guys know, out of our school, we help with the Jiu-Jitsu program at the FBI's Hostage Rescue Team. They have a Jiu-Jitsu program. It's a long-standing Jiu-Jitsu program run out of another one of Dollar's black belts. Chad LeBrun has been running that program for years, and we help him kind of facilitate that Jiu-Jitsu program for the operators. But there's a clear distinction. They call it sustainment training because it is sustainable and you can do it all the time. That doesn't mean they don't have their high order combative system that they train to fight, but you can't train that stuff every day. Even training it every week, you break people. Yeah. Plus, it's just not fun. It's not fun to train that hard every day for that type of stuff. And you can't do that with that kind of unit, right? There has to be some rhythm. We're the same. Yeah. And so I think Jiu-Jitsu also helps us fill a gap with McMath where, Originally General Jones, Carter Urso told me this once. He was one of the original writers of McMap, and we're pretty good friends. And he said to me, the Commandant wanted something Marines would do on their own after hours. That's not McMap.
I agree. Yeah.
That is jiu-jitsu, but jiu-jitsu will clearly enhance all of those skills that are taught McMap. And to me, the HRT model, proven 20 years, they've been doing it up there, and it works.
Yeah.
So I think that it's easy to marry the two together, in my opinion.
Yeah, and to kind of tie together, you touched on it, and then you touched on it as well, is McMap is for, that external enemy, the ones we're going to face in combat. Jiu-jitsu is really for that internal enemy, right? It's for those folks to keep us from, getting so stressed out in an adverse situation. The 3 hashtags, they go right along with what Kelly was talking about. It's warfighting, decision-making, resiliency. And I mean, I got the good book right here, MCDP1, warfighting. It's one of those things that you can literally teach this on the mats, okay? And then you take MCDP7, quick plug for the Marine Corps there, learning, right? It talks all about learning and the way jiu-jitsu helps yourself, because you can't do McMap all the time. I can't sit there and use a pugil stick on you every given day, and as an MAIT, I understand that just like you do. But it's one of those things that when you continuously put yourself in a situation where you have to solve a problem, which is every time you step on the mats, you build mental resiliency. You learn how to make decisions in an adverse environment, in a time condensed environment at that. So it's one of those things, even coming from being a battalion commander, there'd be just a day that was just like, oh my God, I'm not winning today. It's 30 minutes on the mats, it was one of those things, just cleared everything. Everything subsided, and those are those things that go back to like what General Jones really looked for. Hey, we want something we can do all the time, and it's sustainable throughout, right? So we see it all the time. We see TBS lieutenants show up and they want to train, right? We see Marines always looking for something. And it's not just showing up to say, hey, I'm here to learn how to fight. I'm here to learn how to roll. It's like, hey, well, I want to teach you something along the way. Let's teach you how to utilize this. And it falls right in line with everything that the Marine Corps has already taught us. Builds better teams. By far, all of us have grappled and trained with our Marines. You build a cohesive unit so easily because you're enduring that hardship, even though it's not really hard, slap hands, fist bump, and you roll, but you tap out at any time that you're feeling some sort of pain like that too. But it also teaches that humility piece, because you tap out, right? We're all alpha males. We don't like to lose, but at the same time, we sit there, and this is a place where we can learn from your failure, if you will, right? A lot of us compete
immediate
outside.
Feedback.
Immediate feedback, right? and that's one of those things. Sometimes you don't get that. And with McMap, you do McMap, you get your belt, you may stop at that belt level, and you don't use that sustainment training to go on. So now everything that I learned that was good and those intangibles I've learned through that course, I lose those over time. But it's one of those things. If I'm doing it continuously, it's going to stay with me. It's a lifelong thing that we can actually give Marines, which I think is the greatest thing we can do.
I think what we'll see over the next, say, 3 to 5 years is a merger of the informal stuff will start to get more aligned to things like, so what's the difference between, say, what I was doing when I was a platoon commander doing grappling, and you as a company commander. And I think eventually we arrive at a more direct approach of using MCDP language, introducing that into the training, that kind of thing. And that's probably how the future looks, as some formal effort and the informal efforts merge together and get aligned. The biggest dangers are that we try to make a new jiu-jitsu. That would be just stupid.
Just let it be what it is.
Just stupid. So every commander, person, whatever, thinks they want to codify anything, it's probably a bad idea. It just probably is. Everybody's going to do their thing, and that's some of the, I guess, risk, going forward. And so that's part of the reason we're sitting down to do this, is for all our Marines out there who are kind of see this and understand and know this is probably what we should be doing, but don't know exactly how to get there, We just don't want anybody to mess it up.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, we just jiu-jitsu the same way we learned in good schools. That's it. That's what we need. And yeah, I think that's it. I think over the next 3 to 5 years, we'll see it happen.
I definitely think it's gonna pick up. Going back to a point you just made, and I only this week did I really make this kind of correlation, but I think the difference between your time as a platoon commander, doing what you did, floating across the transatlantic, fast forward a few years, I won't say how many years, but I was a company commander floating across. I think the big difference that I noticed was a baseline. More Marines have a baseline for good grappling. It's not just grab and smash. It's more Marines are aware of the grappling community. Some of them, whether they started, stopped, whether they went with a buddy, never went back. Right. But I think the baseline is a little higher than it was maybe when you started. So.
And probably I think about this a lot because I've had my school for 13 years, something like that, coming up on 14. And I'm telling you, for 10 years there were almost no lieutenants.
Oh yeah,
none. I mean, like the TBS lieutenants. And then when you were a captain, you guys came that year, and we talked about there were 5 of you guys. What year was that?
That was 2011 to 12.
So I hadn't been going that long. We had just
Yep.
started. Imagine the difference at COA now from when that year to now. There's so many more Marines are trained. But I also think that's just because so many more people train.
Yeah, that's true.
The art is growing,
Yep.
and Marines are going to be part of that. I think we have the UFC generation. That's how I think of it. Yeah. So now when a lieutenant comes in the door, there's a lieutenant in school. We did our cake cutting ceremony for the birthday.
Yeah.
Had a little cake cutting ceremony, and the lieutenant's birthday was like March or April 2001. The UFC started in 93. 93, right? This kid's born in 2001. They don't have a time when there wasn't MMA. It's regular. It's a regular part of the sport vernacular now, and it wasn't then. And so I think some of that is what we're seeing. But man, I think there's a lot of Marines training, which is how we started this whole conversation in the first place. Man, a lot of us are training, looking at each other, saying we can do better.
I agree.
We can do better than grassroots all the time, everywhere, every day.
Right.
There are some good things like you added this stuff. You were the one that made me aware of that. We should directly be associating this language. I had done it informally in my mind after company command. I'm like, man, I think that training helped me. Right. I'm pretty sure it did, but I had a hard time articulating it. Yeah. I think it's because it is the embodiment of the philosophy.
It is.
I think it is.
One cool experience I had this past week again, coming off of duty. So I was standing duty, myself, Dan Greenlee, blue belt, training with him, the Brownstone, came up here. We're standing in the lobby. Jordan Miller walks in, another trainer, Danny Diaz. So literally, four Marine majors standing in the lobby of the building, all common Marine Corps but Jiu-Jitsu. Right. That was the first time I had ever experienced all in uniform, but all we talked about was Jiu-Jitsu.
Right.
And that is awesome.
And what's cool about that is like Dan now is coming to EWS, doing part of the Marine Corps University's Jiu-Jitsu program. Knew him at Groundstone, knew you at EWS. You were doing it at EWS, so it's Matt Simpson right now, another major. He started with you when you were running the program in 2017. Started his jiu-jitsu career, if you will, and he has stuck with it. And now he's a blue belt. He just got his first stripe the other day too, and he's helping me coach because he's able to piece all this together. But he's seen how good jiu-jitsu is for that soul cup that you need filled every once in a while as well. So.
I stopped by the EWS a few weeks ago to see Colonel Lively to talk to him about them hosting Chad Robichaud at EWS. And he wasn't in, and I kind of went, okay, director, deputy director. I think it was an adjutant maybe. I don't remember. This captain in there, and we start talking, and I said, this is why I'm here. I'm sorry I'm just dropping in, but I was in the area. And as a conversation, eventually I mentioned Robichaud, and then we mentioned jiu-jitsu, and he kind of lights up a little bit. And, we start talking, and he said, I knew you, sir, because you gave me my first gi. I was in TBS. I said, really? He said, I'm a purple belt now.
That's awesome.
He said, I trained at Trident.
That's
Isn't that
awesome.
crazy?
Yeah.
Man, I was overly proud of myself. You know what I mean? I'm going to try and give out some more yees. But,
There you go. There you go.
but Robichaud is the most articulate person that I have heard talk about the relationship between jiu-jitsu and the pillars of resiliency for an individual.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I know you had him on your podcast before, but for any Marines who do end up listening to this, we've tried to articulate it and what we're doing, but that's another resource if you're really, what do you mean by jiu-jitsu for resiliency? Hopefully we've expressed, it's not just that.
Yeah.
We're trying to make Marines tough.
Yeah.
But being resilient is part of being tough.
Yeah.
So
definitely hearing his story is humbling, definitely.
And we see this a lot too. And you touched on like the FBI HRT, right? We see a lot of this in the law enforcement community as well, because people are realizing, hey, it shouldn't be I'm reaching for my pistol as the first move. There's kind of an escalation of force things that go with that, So it's the controlling piece of it too, but it's also, hey, making them more resilient, better decision makers, letting them deal with adverse situations as well. And I mean, that's huge. You got the adopt a cop programs that are at many schools now, and you got so many folks that are influencers on social media, Tom DeBlas being a big one, talking about every cop should be at least a blue belt, and they start talking about those things. Whether or not it's a certain belt that you ascribe that person, it's just the positive, tangible, and intangibles that you get from jiu-jitsu in that high risk, high stakes game of being a law enforcement officer that we deal with as well. Maybe not as continuously as they do.
Yeah, that's probably a whole nother conversation. And you've done a podcast on that too.
Right.
Jiu-jitsu and law enforcement.
I
have watched that happen.
Yeah.
And that, at least in some places, that's a much bigger thing. I mean, anyway, it will be actually easier for us to affect our entire culture and organization than it is going to be for them to do.
Yeah, because they come in looking for what you would categorize as number 3, like the physical piece, as number 1, but really they need 1 and 2 before they even get
resiliency.
to
Resilience,
that's
for them.
That's right.
That's right. I agree. The art has evolved, and just this year, Robert Drysdale's book, which I know both you guys are into, and I recently read. It shows you the evolution of this thing, and that surely it's going to continue to evolve.
Absolutely.
And each of us potentially who love this art are going to have some role in whatever the next step is. But we, as Marines, I think we're on the cusp of whatever this, he broke it down in the waves,
right.
But these are our Marines are going to be coming into this new wave.
Yeah.
And what does that mean for us as warriors? Because a lot of things he talks about in that book are relevant for us.
I agree.
About, okay, how far down the fighting path is this or not? This is one of the things that one of the reasons why Colonel Bristol was less of a fan of rolling than, say, we are today. He was not a big fan of that.
Mm-hmm.
Colonel Bristol was like, well, put a weapon in there and then it's real.
And now let's see your decision making.
and there, that is valid, and there's a time and a place for that. But I think what we've learned from that time to now, through 20 years of practicing this art, that fighting is not necessarily the number one thing you get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
There are other things that are more important that you can get from this art, and we as Marines can take advantage of all of that stuff. But our, say, 20 years in Afghanistan or wherever long we were there, man, how many hand-to-hand combat engagements do we have? We had some.
Mm-hmm. There
are some, and it's important for us to always be prepared for that. And even if we weren't going to do it, just for pure toughness, we should do it. But my practice of grappling arts, first wrestling, judo, and jiu-jitsu in the back half of my career taught me that there were other things on the list before the fighting part, and that's where I think we got it wrong.
I agree. Yeah, the mental, we tried to codify it in our, 3 pillars of McMap, but I think more often than not, the physical is the, physical characteristics is what everybody focuses in on.
Right.
They forget about the moral and the mental, or character, sorry. It's all about the physical piece. You know, I have to have the highest PFT, CFT. I have to be able to carry the most amount of weight, you know, on a hike. Yeah, yes, but 1 and 2 make those possible. You know, being the mental resiliency in your decision making. If you don't have those, then it's hard to get to the physical resiliency. You know. So.
Well, I mean, even the I'll open up the good book here right now. Last page of MCDP1. In short, maneuver warfare is a philosophy for generating the greatest decisive effect against the enemy at the least possible cost to ourselves. A philosophy for fighting smart. Smart is not through my physicality.
Yeah, exactly.
Smart is through my head,
Yep.
right? And then you take Helio Gracie. I mean, I love that these two quotes just match each other. Jiu-Jitsu is the art of human intelligence overpowering brute strength.
Yep.
I mean, that just shows, like right there, they're tied together, and it's not about the physical piece. And in warfighting, it doesn't just go after physical. I mean, it's telling you, hey, attrition is not the thing. It's there. It's a part of maneuver warfare. We got to be smarter first.
Yep.
You know, General James Mattis, the biggest weapon that you have is right there in your head. It's your brain, right? Right there between your ears. So.
Well, I'm gonna start. Do you have something else we were gonna do?
I was just going to say this may leave a lot of Marines asking, you know, what next? What's the next steps, right? I would tell you, find a, you know, dojo, gym, academy, whatever they call it in your area. Go train. If you're on one of the major bases or stations, East Coast, West Coast, and even in Okinawa, you know, ask around. There's got to be somebody training. Definitely more common nowadays. Just go train, man. Get on the mats and go train.
It. Find a school, find a club, find people who are training, get on the mat, go train. And Marines, you know, think about warfighting while you're training. Just think about it. It's not what it's all. It doesn't have to be all about that, but just think about it. Last thing, chill out.
Yeah.
Chill the hell out.
Don't kill each
Chill
other.
out. Stop trying to beat each other and
Quit winning practice.
Learn to roll.
Yeah.
Learn to train. Learn to roll together. We as Marines training, we need to chill the hell out. Period. You know, no codification and relax. Chill out.
Yeah,
That'd be the two things I want to end this thing with. You know.
Yeah, and
But
with
there's
that,
more coming. It's going to get formalized. It's going to be at the MAPC eventually. Those are opinions. Again, none of this is official Marine Corps policy, but we know what we're talking about. But things could change, of course, officially. But I think we're going to see it more.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think the big piece, you know, you start talking about, you know, why jiu-jitsu, and it's about that Marine, right? We hear it all the time, but that's the single most important thing or aspect, whatever you want to call it, on the battlefield, right? So it's just taking care of one another. It's a force protection piece, right? We're not hurting ourselves by going fast. There is some goodness in saying, hey, we just got done with a hike. Let's throw our mouthpiece in and grapple.
Absolutely.
But you can always tell the dudes that train, because they just lean back, they just go slow with it when everybody else is spazzing out. So it goes to your point of just slow down.
Yeah.
And that was one of the first things we hit even when we started the Marine Corps University, saying you slow down.
Just calm down.
And I mean, have fun with it.
Yeah.
It's fun. You know, so I think this just continues in the future. Official with Victor 3-4 right now, continues the push through 1st Marine Division, builds across, and there's all goodness from the Jiu-Jitsu program happening.
And under the talent management paradigm, Staff Sergeant Straley received 2 sets of orders as a uniquely qualified and educated, trained Marine. When he is done at 3-4, he already knows he's coming back here to Quantico to the Martial Arts Center, presumably to execute some piece of the Jiu-Jitsu program, assuming things don't change and we stay on this path, which I think is logical.
Agreed.
Let's get the culture right and move out forward.
Yeah, but for now that's it. For now the program is chill the hell out, don't codify it, be patient, more is coming, you know, and don't get too far off the reservation.
Absolutely.
There's an official effort and there are some unofficial efforts, but people need to understand that you need to be aligned to the official stuff.
Right.
You know.
Go train, not just Marines. I always make a plug for all first responders, policemen, firefighters, you know, emergency response personnel, everybody. Go train, man. It's definitely good for quality of life. So with that, we will end. Thanks again, gentlemen, for coming back on the podcast.
Thank you.
Kinda
Thank you
clearing
for
up,
using your platform to help us.
Absolutely.
Conference, of course, we could hopefully be in your
Absolutely.
Anybody, anyway, but still, we did ask. We asked you,
No.
and you obliged, so thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
We did not.